here with Angelika Sadar at the Boston Trauma Research Foundation conference, the Bessel conference. And I'm happy that we're talking together about what she's doing, what they're doing with her husband around neurofeedback. So hi, Angelika.
Hi.
Thank you for being here and accepting to maybe this small conversation about what you're doing, what you've been doing around the treatment of trauma. And you're really a specialist of neurofeedback, or maybe we can define what neurofeedback is because people don't really know.
Sure. Yes. Thanks for having me. If you can think of a large umbrella that is the umbrella of biofeedback, then there are different components to that. And one part is looking at how does our body respond. So our heart rate, and you know about biofeedback because you've taken your temperature. And when you take your temperature, you look at the thermometer and you say, oh, it's 104. I'm going to stay in bed. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to eat chicken soup and I'll feel better. Then you take your temperature again and you say, oh, I feel better. What I did worked. That's really slow biofeedback. But with other forms of biofeedback in modern computer technology, we can get very quick information about what's happening with our physiology. And that could include our heart rate, our heart rhythms, our temperature, our muscle tension. So if we think of people with trauma, they're very used to needing to protect themselves. And so their muscles are tense. They don't breathe very well because our body is in a fight or flight stage trying to protect ourselves. And another thing that changes is ultimately that changes our brain so that our brain stays in a highly alert state. So neurofeedback is a form of biofeedback that lets us get information about what our brain is doing. And when we get that information, we can ultimately learn to have our brain work more efficiently.
And so when we talk about trauma, where does neurofeedback come? Where does it come? Where come in?
Yeah. So if you imagine somebody who needs to be in an alert state for whatever reason, whether it's a baby that wasn't shown care and affection, their brain never learned how to develop that ability to self-calm. Okay. Or if a child later in life was exposed to whatever traumatic experiences, even if their brain was at one time well regulated, now it learns to protect itself. And so it gets stuck in that mode. And so the neurofeedback what happens is you're hooked up, you have sensors that are reading the electrical activity in your brain, and you get a kind of a symbolic representation of what your brain is doing. And that symbolic representation could be a rocket flying. And if momentarily your brain is just a little bit calmer, the rocket will fly. And we like to see that. So when we see that rocket flying, the brain wants to learn to do more of that. So ultimately it learns to make more of those calmer brain waves. And we can measure lots of different parts in the brain and get information about how the trauma impacted it. But over time, just like you learned to ride a bicycle or you learned your ABCs by practicing, if you practice making more calm brain waves, ultimately the brain will then be able to make them. Doesn't mean that you can't be alert or be protected when you need to be, but you can also be calm when you don't need to be in a heightened alert state.
So it's really helping the brain. It's retraining the brain
exactly
to its normal way of functioning.
It's like a physical therapy for the brain.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And is it sufficient for itself, or is it to be used in combination with other therapies? How do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely, with the other therapies. So one of the things that happens with trauma is that we lose our ability to express ourselves. Again, the body, the physiology, the brain, everything is going into a fight or flight stage, a protective, restricted stage. And you've had that experience, right? If I don't know, if you're like, all of a sudden all the books fall off the shelf, you can't even explain what happened. Um, and in trauma, that really is an experience that happens, and it stays stuck with the person, so they can't express themselves. But if we can then calm them down, if we can get the brain re-regulated, then they can engage in therapy, or they can benefit more from the other therapies they're using, whatever it is, EMDR, whether they're yoga, exercise, any of the internal family systems. Now they can begin to express themselves more.
So it's not really healing, but it's helping the brain to and the individual to regain power and to be able to get to the root maybe of the trauma.
Yes. So we use diagnoses, right? We say people are depressed, people are anxious, but what does that tell us? It doesn't really tell us anything. So what we want to do is, just like if physically, if your back hurts, that doesn't mean you have a back problem. Maybe your foot's broken and you haven't been taking care of that. So we want to get to what's going on in the brain so that that part of the brain can work right, so that it can be regulated, so that we use terms like activation and arousal, so that when it needs to be activated, when you need to protect, it can move into that activated mode. But when it doesn't need to, like right now, this should be a nice, calm experience. And so we should be able to be relaxed and feel safe. And we can do that if our brain lets us do it. But if our brain is so used to needing to keep in a protected state, then we're not going to be able to be relaxed in such a nice setting such as this.
So it's really indicated for people who are this feeling of being always in a survival mode, for example.
Yes, but it also is applied to peak performance.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wants to function better, no matter what we do, right? So if we have trauma, we want to be able to engage in a way and have relationships and be able to interact and feel safe. And if we're a high level athlete, we want to be able to be better than the other high level athletes. And that just means having our brain do more of what we wanted to do when we needed to do it.
So it's not only for trauma; it should be for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody should benefit from neurofeedback sessions.
It's just like exercise. Anybody should benefit from exercise and making things work well. Yeah. Yes.
And how long does it take to? Is it one to many sessions, or do we have to do it regularly in time? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, we're teaching the brain to change. So again, if you think of anything you've done in your life, if you've learned to ride a bicycle, you can't master that in one try. Some people can do pretty good in one try, but they're still not going to be good bike riders. And the same thing's true with neurofeedback. You're trying to teach your brain something new. The research shows that it should take about 20 sessions for the brain to learn it and hold on to it. But then we're all individuals, so that could vary. Some people might be able to respond and maintain that new mode of pattern in their brain quicker. Others might take a little longer, and it depends on the level of complexity of what we're working with. But some people will literally feel something in the first session. They'll feel, a calming. It's not going to last. Chances are it's not going to last over a long period of time because the brain hasn't learned it. So it's not going to kind of hold on to that as something it knows.
Okay. And so you are doing trainings for therapists?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes. And that involves, there's the aspect of understanding about the brain, and that can be daunting for some therapists. I never thought I was going to I never expected to learn about the brain, but I have found once I've started, it becomes very interesting. And so there's just learning to understand the mechanism of how the brain works. And we're not teaching people to be, neurologists. We're teaching them how just to understand some of the basics of it, and then learning how to manage the equipment and interface with the equipment. And ultimately, the most important thing is what the therapists already have, is the ability to engage with their patients and to be able to understand and interact with them and understand what the patients want, and then using the neurofeedback software and equipment to help the patient develop these new systems.
Okay, are all the trainings in person, or can you do it online?
Before COVID, they were all live. And now there's a variety. We have found over the last few years that having a combination of a self-paced, asynchronous type of videos that you can watch, paired with live discussion and paired with in-person trainings, is really what we're finding to be the best modality. And our colleagues are finding that as well. But not everything has to happen face to face. You can do a lot of learning on your own, but there's a lot to be said for being with your teacher and interacting and getting that quick feedback on how you're doing to help you progress as a new person learning neurofeedback.
Okay, I hope we can maybe find a way to bring that to the French-speaking people that we are working with. Is there anything you want to add before we end this conversation, or things that you think it's so important that people know about what you've been learning those years working with neurofeedback and trauma? And
Oh, goodness. I think as a therapist, it can really facilitate the progress of the clients and the patients that you're working with. We hear again and again that as a therapist, it helps them feel less burnt out, because working with people with trauma is intense. And this, while I don't think it makes the work less intense, when you're doing the neurofeedback and you're seeing the progress that the clients are having, that it's very rewarding. It allows you to see more clients because you're less burnt out. We hear that again and again. We also hear that no-show rates are better. So from the point of view of a practitioner, it's a loss of income if you have a no-show. And so that is less frequent, because for the clients, it also has the benefit of they see themselves changing, and they're not needing to repeat the traumatic experiences, and they're able to access the language to help progress the way they want to in their lives. So it's been very, very rewarding. That's why we keep doing it. And that's why, we're really dedicated to help people learn it, because it has just been a game changer for us, for our clients, and for us.
Okay. Thank you. And I've heard Bessel van der Kolk say that it's really, it should be mandatory to have some neurofeedback sessions, because it really helps the treating of trauma. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks for bringing this. And I hope we can help bring it to the French people. That'd be a very great pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.